The auction house hums with the energy of greed and cruelty. Neon lights flickering across metallic walls, casting sharp shadows over the assembled bidders. They come from all corners of the galaxy, hulking reptilians, draped in silk insectoid creatures, clicking their mandibles, whispering into translated devices, soft-skinned aristocrats, wrapped in flowing robes, their jeweled fingers tapping impatiently as they eye the stage. At the center of it all stands the prize, a feline humanoid bound in chains, her emerald eyes sharp and unyielding despite the filth and bruises marking her golden fur. She does not beg, she does not plead, she has long since learned that such things are useless. Her ears twitch at the murmured calculations around her, the rising numbers, the eager haggling over her value, as if she were nothing more than a piece of rare art to be displayed in some distant palace. The auctioneer, a bloated alien with slick purple skin and a voice like oiled steel, raises his hands for silence. A rare one, he declares, exotic, trained, obedient, but with spirit just enough to entertain, just enough to break. The gathered bidders chuckle, their grins sharp and predatory. The feline glares back, refusing to lower her head. She will not give them the satisfaction. Bidding begins fast, aggressive, the numbers climbing as each wealthy monster fights to claim her. Her stomach twists as she hears them discuss her, as if she is not there, as if her thoughts, her pain, her very existence are secondary to the pleasure of ownership. The price soars past the average for her kind, past the cost of a starship, yet the hands keep rising, the voices keep calling, until suddenly a new voice cuts through the chaos, deep, calm, certain. 5 million credits. The number drops like a thunderclap. The room falls into stunned silence. All eyes turn toward the speaker, standing at the edge of the chamber, bathed in the dim glow of the overhead lights. A human, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark armor, worn from battle, yet carrying himself with the quiet assurance of someone who does not need to prove his strength. A human, the feline's ears flicker. She has seen few of them among the elite. Slave as their kind, is known for its wars, for its colonies, for its refusal to bow to anyone, yet they are also known for their ambition, their hunger for control. The auctioneer recovers quickly, laughing smoothly. A generous bid indeed, but surely we can go higher. A rustle of uncertainty sweeps through the crowd. 5 million is an absurd price for a single slave, even one of her rarity. But the human does not move, does not waver, his eyes locked onto the stage, unwavering, cold. The auctioneer waits, but no other bids come. The buyers shift uneasy, unwilling to challenge him, unwilling to risk the unknown weight behind his presence. Very well, the auctioneer finally declares, slamming the gavel with a grin. Sold to the human. A murmur ripples through the whole, speculation, intrigue, confusion. The feline watches him closely as he steps forward, his movements measured, controlled. He does not leer, does not smirk, does not revel in his victory. He simply hands over his credits and gestures for her to be released. The guards hesitate only for a moment before obeying. The chains fall away from her wrists, clattering to the floor, her fur bristles, waiting for the next command. But it does not come. He does not reach for her, does not pull her to his side like so many others before him. Instead, he simply turns his back and walks toward the exit, as if her presence is no longer his concern. She does not understand this. She was bought, she belongs to him now. So why does he act as though she does not exist? Confusion wars with instinct, but years of survival have taught her one thing above all: hesitation is weakness. So she follows, trailing him at a distance, her sharp eyes locked on his back, trying to unravel the mystery of the human who just paid a fortune for her and yet does not claim her. She follows him through the winding corridors of the auction house, her steps light and measured, every instinct screaming at her to stay alert, to watch for the trap that must be coming. Nothing in her experience has prepared her for this. No master, no slave, no buyer has ever ignored a purchase before. It is always the same, always a firm grip on her wrist, always a leash, always a command. But this human, he does none of it. He simply walks ahead, without turning, without acknowledging her, as if she is already forgotten. Her eyes flick to the guards stationed along the halls. Some watch with amusement, others with confusion. But none intervene. He has paid his price. She is no longer their concern. Outside, the air is thick with the scent of fuel and methyl neon lights, reflecting off the rain-slick street speeders. Overhead, the spaceport looming in the distance, he moves toward it. Without hesitation, never once looking back, she follows her feet, moving before she can think. Because there is nowhere else to go, yet her mind races trying to decipher what kind of game this is. They reach a small docked freighter, dark metal, scuffed from countless battles, a vessel built for endurance, not luxury. He stops at the base of the ramp, finally turning his gaze sharp, unreadable, but not cruel. She tenses, expecting an order, a demand, a leash. But instead, he simply reaches into his belt, pulls out a small device, and tosses it toward her. She catches it on instinct, her claws barely grazing the surface, before she realizes what it is, a datapad. She blinks at it, her ears flicking upwards, scanning the screen. The balance displayed is more credits than she has ever seen, in one place, enough to disappear forever, enough to buy passage to any system in the sector, enough to start a life of her own. Her grip tightens around the device, her breath slow and controlled, but her heart pounds against her ribs. "You're free." His voice is calm, steady, with none of the arrogance she expects, none of the mocking cruelty. She has learned to anticipate. "I don't own you. I don't want to own you. You can go wherever you want." He gestures toward the crowded streets, the ships, the endless possibilities beyond them, his expression unreadable, but his posture open. She does not move, does not speak. The word free rings in her ears, a concept so distant, so foreign, but her mind cannot grasp it. She knows better than to trust words, knows better than to believe in mercy. No one gives without taking, no one offers freedom without a hidden chain. She has seen this trick before, seen slavers release their captives just to hunt them down again for sport, seen masters dangle the illusion of choice just to watch it crumble beneath the weight of reality. So she waits, watching him closely, searching for the deception. But he does not press, does not step closer, does not try to convince her. He only turns away, walking up the ramp into his ship, leaving her standing alone in the dim glow of the docking bay, the rain beginning to fall cool against her fur. She glances back toward the streets, scanning the neon haze, the endless crowds, the world stretching out before her. Every muscle in her body tells her to run, to disappear, to take this chance, and never look back. But her feet do not move. She is free, she tells herself, free to go. Yet she finds herself staring at the ship, at the ramp, at the human who has vanished inside without waiting for her. Her claws flex against the datapad, her tail flicking behind her. The logical choice is to leave, to take the credits, and disappear forever. But instead her legs move, and she does not stop them, her steps silent, as she follows him up the ramp into the ship. Her own actions, a mystery even to herself. The ship hums with the quiet rhythm of an old vessel built for war, but repurposed for something else. The walls are reinforced, the control panels, worn from years of use. The air carries the faint scent of metal fuel, and something else, something distinctly human. She moves carefully, her senses sharp, her muscles coiled for action, though she does not know what she expects, a trick, a trap, an ambush that never comes. The human moves with the same calm control he had in the auction house, his boots echoing lightly against the grated floor. He does not speak, does not acknowledge her presence. As he moves through the ship, checking systems, flipping switches, adjusting dials, she watches from the threshold, her fingers tightening around the datapad, still uncertain, still waiting for the moment his true intentions reveal themselves. She has spent her entire life under the rule of others. She knows how this works. There is always a cost, always a hidden price, wrapped in pretty words. Yet he has asked for nothing, demanded nothing, only given her freedom, and turned his back, as if she is no longer his concern. But that is the part that does not make sense. No one lets go of something valuable without a reason. The engines hum to life, the floor vibrating softly beneath her feet as the ship prepares for takeoff. Outside, the docking bay workers move between ships, loading cargo, shouting orders, ignoring the lone feline standing in the open doorway, staring into the unfamiliar space before her. She should leave now, should run before he changes his mind, before whatever game this is turns against her. But she does not move her feet, remain planted, her breath slow, controlled, her mind searching for the answer to a question she does not yet understand. Why did he buy her if not to use her? Why did he give her freedom without asking for anything in return? Why does she hesitate to take it? The ship jolts as the docking clamps release the human moving to the pilot's seat, his hands gliding over controls with the ease of someone who has done this 1,000 times. He glances toward her for the first time since entering the ship, his gaze unreadable, yet not unkind. "If you're coming in, close the door," he says, his voice as steady as it was before. She stiffens, her tail flicking behind her, the choice laid out before her clear and simple. She can step back out onto the docks, vanish into the chaos of the city, disappear into a world where she owes nothing to no one, or she can step forward into the unknown, into something she does not yet understand. The door hisses shut behind her before she realizes she has moved. The ship lifts off smoothly, leaving the neon lights and rain-slick streets behind, the city shrinking beneath them, until it is nothing but a distant glow in the darkness. She remains near the door, her muscles tight, her claws flexing against her palms as she watches him fly. "You don't talk much," he says, his eyes still on the controls. She says nothing, her mind still tangled in unanswered questions. He sighs, adjusting a few settings before leaning back in his seat, his expression unreadable. "You think this is a trick?" he continues, not a question but a statement. She narrows her eyes but does not deny it. He exhales, something close to a laugh, but without humor, shaking his head slightly before standing up, stretching his arms, before turning to face her. "I don't expect you to trust me," he says, "and that's fine, but you should at least know my name before you decide whether I'm worth killing." She tenses, her ears twitching slightly as he crosses the space between them, stopping just outside her reach. No fear, no hesitation, only the same quiet certainty that unsettles her more than any threat could. "Call me Dane," he says, his gaze steady. She does not respond, does not give him her name, does not acknowledge his offer of something resembling trust, yet something in his stance, something in his voice, tells her that he does not expect her to, not yet, and that is the only reason she does not turn and walk away. Instead, she lifts the datapad, staring at the balance again, her mind racing with possibilities, calculations, escape routes, 1,000 different futures stretching before her, and yet none of them feel quite real, none of them make sense in the way they should. So she stays standing in the doorway between freedom and the unknown, between survival and something more, between the only life she has ever known and something that terrifies her more than chains ever could. Choice. The ship hums around her, a quiet rhythm of machinery and life support systems running in the background. The sound is unfamiliar, not the clanking chains of a slave transport, not the sterile silence of a master's vessel, just the steady pulse of something meant to move, meant to carry people across the stars. She stands near the door, unmoving as the human. Dane returns to the pilot's seat, his fingers gliding over controls, his posture relaxed yet focused. She watches him closely, trying to unravel the puzzle before her. He does not act like a slaver, does not act like a master or a buyer. He has not once issued a command, nor has he given her orders or expectations. It unsettles her more than she is willing to admit. She has spent her entire life knowing what she is supposed to be, how she is supposed to act, what role she is supposed to fill. But now there is nothing, no instructions, no direction, just silence and space, and a human who refuses to play the part she expects. She tightens her grip on the datapad, her claws just barely pressing into the surface, the credits still there, still hers, a way out, a way to vanish. And yet she does not move, she tells herself. She is only watching him to understand the trick, to uncover the deception before it is too late. Because there has to be one. There always is. Nothing in this universe is given freely, nothing is ever without cost. Dane leans back in his chair, stretching his arms above his head, before glancing at her again, his expression unreadable, but there is something in his gaze, something she cannot quite place. "You plan to stand there all night?" he asks, his tone not mocking, just curious. She does not answer. He exhales, shaking his head, before tapping a few controls. The ship shifts, smoothly adjusting course, the stars outside stretching slightly before settling into place. "All right," he says finally, "I'll make it simple. I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you. I bought you to get you out of that hellhole, because no one deserves to be a thing. If you want to take the credits and go, fine. I'll drop you off anywhere you want. No strings, no debts, no tricks." She studies him carefully, searching for the lie, but his heartbeat does not spike, his breathing remains steady, his scent carries no trace of deception, only quiet certainty. No one is this selfless. No one does something for nothing. There is always a reason, always a cost. She folds her arms, her tail flicking once behind her. Her voice, when it finally comes, is quiet but sharp. Why? Dane tilts his head slightly as if considering her question, then shrugs. Because it's right. She bares her teeth, slightly a flicker of frustration curling in her chest at the simplicity of his answer. Nothing is ever that simple. Right does not exist in a galaxy that sells lives in cages and chains. She has seen kindness used as a weapon, seen mercy twisted into control, seen trust become the very thing that enslaves. She does not believe him, she cannot believe him, and yet she is still here, standing in his ship, listening to his words when she could have turned and walked away. Dane sighs, as if sensing her thoughts, then stands up slowly, his movements deliberate, but never threatening. He gestures toward the ship's interior, a silent invitation, before stepping away from the cockpit, vanishing into the corridors, beyond, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She hesitates for a long moment, her ears twitching toward the soft sounds of the ship around her. Part of her screams to run, to leave, before she finds herself trapped again. But another part, the one that has spent years calculating risk and survival, weighs something different, the way he moves, the way he speaks, the way he offers choices instead of commands. And she finds herself unable to look away from the space he left behind. Her feet move before she decides to follow, her steps light and silent, her body tense, her mind racing. She follows him into the unknown because she has spent her life in cages, and perhaps just this once she wants to see what exists beyond them. She moves through the ship, her steps silent, her muscles coiled for action. Every corridor, every open door, every unfamiliar space, a potential threat. The walls are bare, functional, no lavish decor, no symbols of power or ownership. The lighting is soft, the hum of the ship steady beneath her feet. But none of it calms her. She has spent too long in cages, too long under watchful eyes, waiting for the moment. She missteps the moment, the kindness vanishes, and the truth of her situation is revealed. Dane is ahead of her, walking without hesitation, his posture loose, unconcerned, as if he is unaware of the weight in her stare, as if he does not see the way she watches him, waiting for the inevitable shift, for the demand, for the price of his so-called kindness. He does not look back, does not check to see if she follows, yet she does. They enter what looks like a common area, a space with a worn table, a few chairs, storage compartments along the walls. Everything is functional, lived in, but not neglected. He moves to a small console, presses a button, and the faint hiss of the food dispenser fills the space. A metal tray slides out, steam rising from a simple meal. He grabs it without ceremony, placing it on the table before looking at her. "You eat," he says, nodding toward the tray, his voice carrying no command, only certainty, like it is not a question but a fact. She stays by the doorway, her arms crossed, her tail flicking once behind her. Her ears twitch toward the tray, but she does not move. "I don't take food from strangers," she says, her voice even but sharp. Dane sighs, shaking his head before grabbing a utensil. He takes a bite himself, chewing slowly, swallowing before setting it back down, his expression unreadable. "Not poisoned," he says, then leans back against the wall, crossing his arms, his gaze steady. She narrows her eyes, still unmoving. She has seen men eat from the same plate as their prisoners before. She has seen slavers lull their prey into comfort before the chains tighten. She is not a fool. She will not be one of them. "You think I drugged it," Dane says, his tone carrying no anger, only a quiet patience that unsettles her more than anything else. "I think I don't trust you," she replies. He huffs something like amusement, but without cruelty, just acceptance. "Fair enough," he says, then nods toward the chair. "But you still need to eat. I don't care if you wait a day, a week, a month. Hunger wins in the end." She clenches her jaw, but says nothing. She will not let him push her into lowering her guard. She has gone days without food, before weeks on the edge of starvation. She can outlast whatever game this is. Dane watches her for a moment, then sighs again, shaking his head before pushing away from the wall, grabbing the tray, and walking past her without another word. She tenses, expecting something, a trick, a test, but he simply moves to a nearby storage unit, places the tray inside, and shuts it. "Eat when you're ready," he says, then turns and walks away, vanishing into the ship, leaving her alone. She does not move, does not breathe for a long moment, Her mind racing, she had expected anger, expected frustration, expected the moment. His patience snapped, because that is how it always happens. That is how people work. There is no kindness without a limit, no patience without an end. She knows this, because she has lived it, because she has seen it in every master, in every slaver, in every being who thought themselves above her. And yet he simply walked away. Her claws flex against her palms, uncertainty twisting in her chest. She does not understand this game. She does not know the rules, and that terrifies her more than anything else, because as she cannot predict him, she cannot control him, and as she cannot control him, she cannot protect herself. She looks toward the storage unit, where the food now sits untouched, then back toward the corridor, where Dane disappeared, her ears flattened slightly, her tail flicking again, as frustration burns beneath her skin. Because despite everything, despite her instincts, despite her training, she cannot shake the small quiet voice in the back of her mind, whispering that maybe, just maybe, this is not a game at all. She does not eat that night, she does not sleep either. She stays in the common area, sitting against the cold metal wall, her knees drawn up, her tail curled around her, resting, but not relaxing, watching, listening, waiting for the moment. The trap is revealed the moment Dane comes back with demands, with chains, with the truth hidden behind his empty words. But he never does. The ship hums steadily beneath her, the distant sound of engines pulsing through the walls, the occasional soft clicks of systems adjusting automatic calibrations running in the background. Everything is quiet, too quiet. She is not used to silence, not this kind. She has spent too long in crowded pens, surrounded by whispers, by the shuffling of bodies, by the sound of chains, and the weight of watching eyes. The silence of this ship is different, vast, empty, filled only with the distant sound of space beyond its walls, and the slow, measured breaths she forces herself to take. Hours pass, maybe more. Time has always been strange in captivity, the lack of suns, a lack of anything to mark its passage. She does not know how long she sits there, unmoving, but eventually her body reminds her of what she is trying to ignore, the deep ache in her stomach, the way her limbs feel heavier than they should, the way her mind, sharp and alert, now struggles to stay clear. Hunger. She hates it, hates the weakness, hates the reminder of what she is, of what she has always been, a creature with needs, with vulnerabilities. She forces herself to ignore it, forces herself to push past it. But she knows she is losing this fight. Hunger does not care about pride, does not care about strength. Hunger always wins in the end. Her eyes flick toward the storage unit, where Dane had placed the food. She exhales slowly, ears twitching toward any sound. But the ship remains still, no movement, no approaching footsteps, no waiting trap. She moves before she decides to, before she even realizes she is doing it, her body acting on instinct before her mind can stop her. She crosses the room in a few silent steps, her claws barely tapping against the floor. She hesitates just for a moment, then presses the panel. The unit hisses open, the tray sitting exactly where he left it, untouched, undisturbed. She picks it up slowly, fingers tightening around the edges, her breath, even her mind, still screaming at her to be careful, to be sure, to expect the worst, but her stomach twists painfully, reminding her that she does not have the luxury of endless caution. She eats quickly, efficiently, not rushing, but not savoring either, just enough to silence the ache, just enough to keep herself strong. She does not enjoy it, does not allow herself to, even if it is the first real meal she has had in too long. She does not let herself think about that, does not let herself think about anything other than survival. When the tray is empty, she sets it back inside the unit, closes the door, and moves back to her place against the wall, wrapping her arms around her legs, watching, waiting again for something to change, for something to happen. Nothing does. She exhales slowly, tail flicking once against the cold metal floor. Still no trap. Still no chains. Still no sign that Dane is playing some long game, waiting for her to let her guard down. She does not know what to do with that thought, does not know what to do with any of this. Her entire life has been spent in control of herself, in control of her movements, her words, her thoughts, always careful, always calculating every interaction, a game of survival, every kindness, a lie, every promise, a leash waiting to be pulled tight. But he has given her none of that. No orders, no expectations, no pressure, only space, only silence, only choices. She hates it. Because choices are dangerous choices mean risk choices mean consequences. And yet, she is still here, still on this ship, still unwilling to leave, even when the credits he gave her are still waiting, still hers to use to disappear forever. She grips her arms tighter, frustration twisting in her chest, because she does not understand, because she should be running, because she should not still be here. And yet, she stays. She wakes to the scent of coffee, strong, bitter, something she has only ever smelled from a distance, something masters drank, something she was never allowed to touch. Her ears twitch, her body still before her eyes even open, her instincts keeping her motionless as she listens, as she feels the subtle hum of the ship around her, the quiet movements of another nearby. Dane is in the common area, sitting at the table, his boots propped up on an empty chair, his gaze on the datapad in his hands, the steam rising from the cup. Beside him, his posture is loose, relaxed, no sign of tension, no sign of expectation, as if her presence or absence makes no difference to him at all. She hates that it unsettles her, hates that she is still waiting for the moment. He proves himself like the others, waiting for the weight of a collar, waiting for the unspoken debt to be called in, waiting for the moment he reminds her she is not free. Except he never does. She sits up slowly, stretching out her limbs, feeling the stiffness in her muscles, the quiet protest of a body unused to rest. Her tail flicks once as she studies him, watches the way he moves, the way he breathes, the way he seems completely unaffected by her presence, as if she is just another person on this ship, not a slave, not a possession, just a person. It makes no sense. He glances up, finally setting the datapad down, nodding toward the storage unit in the corner. "Food's still there if you want it," he says, voice calm, unreadable. She does not respond, only watches him, waiting for something, waiting for the crack in his act. Dane takes another sip of his drink before exhaling, shaking his head slightly as if amused by something she does not understand. "You keep looking at me like I'm about to pull a knife on you," he says, "but if I wanted you dead or chained up, you really think I'd go through all this trouble?" She narrows her eyes, her claws flexing against her palms. "I don't know what you want," she says, voice cold, controlled, "and that makes you more dangerous than any slave I have ever known." Dane tilts his head, studying her, as if weighing his words before finally speaking. "I want you to stop looking over your shoulder every second. I want you to eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired. I want you to take the credits I gave you and start whatever life you actually want." She stares at him, waiting for the rest, waiting for the price, for the condition. But nothing comes. Just silence. Just his steady gaze, his voice calm and infuriatingly sincere. She clenches her jaw, shifting her stance, tail flicking in frustration. "People don't do things for nothing," she says, voice sharp. "There is always a reason, always a cost." Dane leans back in his chair, folding his arms over his chest, nodding slightly as if he understands, as if he has seen this before. "Maybe," he says, "but not always, not everyone, not me." She hates that answer, hates the way it sits in her chest like something sharp and unmovable. She does not believe him, she cannot believe him, because if she does, if she lets herself think even for a second that he might be telling the truth, then everything she has ever known, everything she has built to survive starts to crack. And she cannot afford that. She steps forward slowly, her movements deliberate, her gaze locked onto his testing, pushing, looking for the weakness in his words. "So if I take the credits, if I walk off this ship right now, you'll let me go just like that?" she asks, voice low, steady. Dane doesn't even hesitate. "Yes." She searches his face, his posture, his scent for deception, for the slightest hesitation, but there is none, nothing but certainty, nothing but the quiet weight of truth in his words. She does not know what to do with that. She should leave, she should take the credits, walk away, disappear, before whatever this is becomes something she does not know how to handle. And yet she does not move. Dane sighs, standing up, stretching before nodding toward the cockpit. "We'll be stopping at a station in a few hours," he says. "I'll give you a name, someone who can help you if you need it. No obligations, no debts, you do whatever you want from here." She should feel relief, should feel victory, should feel something other than this strange twisting weight in her chest. But all she feels is uncertain. And she hates that most of all. The station looms ahead, a massive sprawl of metal and light, orbiting a distant star, its docking bays, busy with ships of all sizes, merchants, travelers, drifters, smugglers, all moving in the endless current of the void. Dane's ship moves smoothly through the traffic, the autopilot handling the approach, while he sits back, arms folded, his gaze calm, as if this moment is nothing, as if it does not matter that they are here, that she will be stepping off this ship and out of his life forever. She stands near the door, arms crossed, tail flicking, ears angled slightly toward him. But she does not look at him, not yet. She keeps her gaze on the view outside, watching as the station grows larger, watching as the moment of choice inches closer with every breath. She should feel relief, she tells herself. She should feel a sense of triumph, because this is what she wanted. This is what she has been waiting for, to be free, truly free, to walk away, without chains, without debts, without obligations. She should want to run, to vanish, to disappear into the vastness of the galaxy, where no one can find her, where no one can ever own her again. And yet, her fingers tighten slightly against her arms, the datapad with the credits still tucked against her side, untouched, unspent, everything she needs to start over, everything she needs to leave. And yet, Dane stretches, once glancing at her before speaking, his voice even steady, giving nothing away. "Docking in 5, he says. She nods once, sharp, precise, but says nothing. He watches her for a moment longer, then sighs, running a hand through his hair, before turning toward the control panel, tapping a few keys, adjusting the power output, checking the systems, all the quiet actions of a man who does not seem to care whether she stays or goes, who has already decided that her choice is hers alone. She hates that. She hates that he does not try to convince her to stay, hates that he does not demand anything from her, because if he did, it would be easier, it would be simpler. She could hate him, she could resent him, she could throw his so-called kindness back in his face, and walk away with no doubts, no hesitation, no weight in her chest that she does not know how to name. But he does none of those things, and that is what keeps her frozen in place. The docking clamps engage with a dull thump, the ship settling into position, the airlock cycling through the usual security checks, and then the panel by the door beeps, once signaling clearance granted, the station beyond waiting ready, open. Dane stands, hands on his hips, looking at her one last time, and then nods toward the door. "It's open," he says. A pause hangs between them, thick with something unspoken, something neither of them has the words for. She swallows once, her throat tight, her mind screaming at her to move, to walk through that door, to leave this ship behind, to leave him behind, to take what she has been given and never look back. Her claws flex against her palms, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She takes one step forward, then stops. Dane does not move, does not push, does not look away. Her tail flicks once, a sharp, frustrated motion, her entire body tense with something she does not understand, something she does not want to understand. Her mouth opens, then closes, then opens again, her voice rough, uneven, when it finally escapes. "Why?" Dane exhales, shaking his head slightly, as if he expected this, as if he has been waiting for her to ask. "Because you deserve more than what was done to you," he says simply. She hates how much that sentence shakes something deep inside her, something she has buried for so long she forgot it was even there. She clenches her jaw, her fists tight at her sides. "That's not an answer," she bites out. Dane shrugs. "Maybe not, but it's the truth." Another pause, another moment, where everything hangs in balance, where everything feels like it could tilt one way or the other, where she could step through that door and never see him again, or... She exhales slowly, tail stilling, her ears pressing back against her skull. She does not know what she is doing. She does not know what she wants. She only knows that leaving suddenly does not feel as simple as it should. She looks at him, really looks at him, at the man who could have been like the others, but wasn't, at the man who gave her a choice and expected nothing in return, at the man who still does not demand an answer from her even now. Her throat tightens. Her feet do not move. The door stands open. But she stays. The airlock stands open, the station beyond pulsing with life voices, distant the hum of machinery, the ever-present murmur of the void pressing against metal. She sees it all, the crowded docks, the flickering neons, signs, the drifting figures, moving from ship to ship, from job to job, from one existence to another. She should step forward, should disappear into that chaos, into that freedom, into that endless sea, where no one knows her name, where no one expects anything from her. But she does not move. Dane watches her, his stance easy, but his eyes unreadable, his hands loose at his sides. No tension, no expectation, just quiet waiting. She should go, she tells herself. She should take the credits, walk away, make this choice final. But something in her refuses, something deep and twisting and raw, something she has not allowed herself to feel in a very long time. Her tail flicks, once ears pressing back, muscles coiled tight, with something that feels like frustration, but is not quite that. "Why did you buy me?" she asks finally, her voice low, sharp, demanding. Dane tilts his head, but does not hesitate. "Because I could," he says. Her claws flex against her palms. That is not an answer. "Because someone had to," he amends, voice steady but quiet. She exhales, slow, controlled, her mind racing, but not finding purchase, not finding logic, not finding the pattern she has always relied on to understand, to survive. Nothing about him makes sense. Nothing about any of this makes sense. "So what now?" she asks. "Do you expect me to be grateful, to stay out of loyalty, to throw myself at your feet, because you decided to be different than the others?" Dane snorts, shaking his head. "If that was what I wanted, I would have put a collar on you and called it a day," he says, voice dry. Her jaw clenches, sharp, defensive, a reflexive anger curling in her chest. "Then what do you want from me?" she demands. "Nothing," he says simply, and that is the part she cannot understand. She glares at him, searching for the lie, but she finds none, and that is more terrifying than anything else, because she knows how to fight, she knows how to resist, she knows how to endure cruelty, she knows how to outlast power. But she does not know how to handle this, does not know how to fight against a kindness that asks for nothing in return. "I don't owe you," she says, voice tight. "No, you don't," he agrees easily. "I don't belong to you." "No, you don't." "Then why do you keep looking at me like you expect me to stay?" Dane exhales, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because I think you want to." Her breath catches, but she does not let it show, does not let the weight of those words settle into her bones. She wants to deny it, wants to throw his words back at him, but she cannot, because deep down, buried beneath years of pain, of control, of survival, there is a part of her that does not want to step through that door. And that is the part she does not know how to face. She should walk away, she should prove him wrong, she should show him that she is free, that she is strong, that she is not bound to him in any way. But she stays. The station calls beyond that threshold. Everything she has ever dreamed of, everything she has ever wanted lies just steps away. She could vanish, she could take the credits, build a new life, never look back, never risk anything, never feel this confusing tightening in her chest again. But she stays. Dane does not speak, does not move, does not pressure her, and somehow that makes it worse, somehow that makes it harder, because if he asked, if he pushed, if he tried to convince her, she could fight back, she could hold on to her anger, her fear, her certainty, but he does not, and so she is left standing on the edge of something she does not understand, something she cannot name. Her fists clench, then relax, she takes a slow breath, then another, then she steps forward, not toward the door but toward him. His brow lifts slightly, but he does not gloat, does not smirk, does not act as if he has won, because this was never a battle, and maybe that is why she cannot leave. She exhales sharply, tilting her head, eyes narrowing slightly as she studies him one last time. "Fine," she mutters finally, "I'll stay for now." Dane nods as if he expected nothing else. For now, he agrees, voice calm, steady, as if he knows what she does not yet understand. As if he knows she is never going to walk away.